What would you guess is Pyongyang's reaction to Mr. Trump's election?
Well, you know, it's almost impossible to guess what goes on in North Korea. I don't think anybody has a good idea. I think the reality is that the key player here is probably not North Korea in some ways for the U.S. in developing a strategy, but China. The question is really what's the North Korean attitude toward China and vice versa, because you can't really make progress creating more pressure on the North Koreans unless China participates. They are basically the lifeline for North Korea. One of the frustrating things for the last few years has been China's unwillingness to engage in creating a lot more pressure on the North Koreans. That's going to have to change as well, but that's going to be complicated both because the Chinese are sort of focused on their own internal economic issues right now, and because they're likely to be somewhat annoyed at the new Trump administration because there appear to be some trade fights looming. So the tricky thing will be getting the Chinese engaged in a new strategy toward North Korea, even amidst some tensions in the U.S.-Chinese relationship.
Yeah, that being the case, that the U.S. needs China to effectively fight this threat. As you mentioned, Mr. Trump has had harsh words for China on trade and other issues. Do you believe, though, that President-elect Trump can work with China against the North Korean threat?
Well, you know, I think ultimately countries do what's in their own interests, and I think the Chinese have to see that it's in their interest for there not to be a nuclear-armed North Korea that actually is a threat to others. There's already a nuclear-armed North Korea. The question is, can it become a nuclear-armed North Korea that extends that threat around the world and even reaching the U.S.? That's a destabilizing force, and I can't imagine the Chinese ultimately want that to happen. The question is, how do you create a situation in which there's a change in North Korea without there also being destabilized Korean peninsula, which the Chinese view as a different kind of threat, one that would produce chaos on their southern border and a big refugee crisis. So I think that probably starts with diplomacy, moves to economic pressure, and then we'll see.